Okay, we're starting now. For people who don't know me, and they shouldn't, my name is Yosef Koren, and I'm an Israeli attorney. And one of my I internship in real estate and inheritance. And we're going to verbring today on Chesvan Hey Chesvan. And you're probably asking yourself, what happened on Chesvan Hey Chesvan that we need to verbring? And the truth of the matter is that this is the date that Barry Guraria's appeals was struck down by the federal appeals court. And we're going to talk you can't talk about an appeal before you talk about the actual case. So we're going to talk today. This is going to be a preview to Hey Teves, in a way, because you can't tell the story of the appeal without talking about the case itself. So let's start. We're talking about the former Rebbe. The former Rebbe had three daughters. Chana Gurari was married to the Rashag, Reb Shmuel Gurari, and Rabbitzin Chayamushka was married to our Rebbe. And the third daughter, Shana Shendel Orenstein, was the youngest. She was married to Rabbi Menachem Mendel Orenstein, and they died in Poland. And when the Rebbe came to the United States, when the former Rebbe came to the United States, he got here at Adar Tafshin after he was saved by a German Nazi officer from the Wehrmacht and got to Riga on Hey Teves, Tafshin. So we see that Hey Teves is a day to be remembered, because that is the beginning of Chabad like we know it today. Why? Because Chabad today is nothing like Chabad when it was in Russia or in the Soviet Union. And that's what we're putting on emphasis today, because when we explain the case, when explaining why we had to go to court, and why it had to be a federal court. Okay, so we're starting to tell the story. The former Rebbe loved books, and every Rebbe needs a library. You have to. If you open a rabbi's siche, you see in the footnotes, you see everything: Talmud, Mishnah, Gemara, Midrashim, Hasidus, whatever. So that means that a Rebbe, when he speaks, he needs an active library. What happened was the Rebbe Rashab had a very big library, but during World War I, it was taken from him. Why? Because during the war, he put it in storage in Moscow, and as we know, after World War I, the Soviet Union took over the private property, and they took over the books, and till today Chabad is fighting to get them back. So the former Rebbe was without books, and he not only was he without books, he was without Hasidim, because in 1927, when he had to leave the Soviet Union and went to Riga, his base was in the United States. And then, in the 1920s, he established the hero of our story, which is Agudas Chasidei Chabad of the United States. Aguda in Hebrew means union, or a unity. And it's Agudat Chasidei Chabad represented the whole Hasidim in the United States and Canada, and was officially took care of all the things the Hasidim need to do. Chevra Kaddish, of course, weddings, funerals, farbrengens, shields, mikvahs, schools, kindergartens, whatever. It was completely was responsible for it. A rabbi who was responsible was called Jacobson. And so, when the Rebbe came to the United States, the former Rebbe came to the United States, they looked for a house who was in a central place, and they looked for something special. The something special was an elevator, because we're talking about the 1940s. Because the situation of the former Rebbe then from 1940 to 1950 was it he wasn't a healthy man after going through hell several times. So 770 in those days, as we know it, there was a basement, the first floor, the first floor where the Rebbe, there was the shield and the places where the Rebbe gave dollars, and in the basement. In the basement there was nothing in the beginning, but that was most of the library was there. Okay. So there was the second floor, who was the house and office of the former Rebbe, and the third floor where the Gerarians lived. Okay, and after and in 1940, after buying 770 was bought by Agudas Chasidei Chabad. And if you look in New York real estate, you see that it's registered on Agudas Chasidei Chabad as owners. The Rebbe has a mortgage there, but it is a non-profit organization.
Before the Rebbe before our Rebbe came to America.
Yeah, we're talking about the 1920s. But in the 1940s, when the former Rebbe came, and the Rebbe came a year after.
41?
Yeah, about. So, after...
At which point the Rebbe also lived in 770 at the beginning?
I don't remember if the Rebbe lived in 770. I don't think so, because I don't think there was room. But I don't know that for sure. And I haven't checked it yet. I think he moved to President Street only when he became Rebbe, but I'm not sure. However, we're talking about books now. What did they do with all the books? The most important Ktuvim and Sforim were in the office of the former Rebbe in the second floor. As you see it, you usually see the picture of the former Rebbe's office. You see a desk with several books on it. And all the walls are with libraries. Now, there were Ktuvim and very valuable books on there, especially the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, which is the most important. And down in the basement, there were also books. So, in 1951, when the Rebbe became Rebbe, he decided that he doesn't want to quarrel with his sister-in-law, which was Chana Goraria and his son, and he left that library to them. There was a librarian and a bibliograph called Chaim Lieberman. He was the former Rebbe's secretary, and he was the librarian who was in charge on that part of the library. On that part of the library, in the years to come, the Rebbe built a different library, which called the Merkaz Linyanei Chinuch Library, the Melech Library, which is in 766.
So at a certain point, the Frierdiker Rebbe, he waived his rights to a certain part of the library?
He didn't waive his rights. He didn't want to quarrel with his. We're talking about after Yud Shvat Tafshin Yud Aleph. So we're talking about immediately after. But the Rebbe. Yeah.
Wow.
And they didn't want to talk about. There's something that people didn't know about. I didn't want to know about it. But that library was very neglected. And the beginning of our story, which concerns Hey Teves, begins when Rabbi Levine, Shalom Dover Levine, who was the chief librarian today, he was approached by Chaim Lieberman saying, I'm an old man now. He was in his, I think, late 80s or whatever. And he said, help me. I need help. And Rabbi Levine wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said that it is impossible and improbable to mix between the two libraries. And that he's doing politics and trying to take the Rebbe with him. Of course, Rabbi Levine had no idea what the Rebbe was talking about. But the situation of the library was very bad. You see from Rabbi Levine's letter, which is written in his book about Hey Teves, he said talking about the Rebbe about shelves. That means that at that part of the library didn't have shelves at that point. Luckily, in the end, there was a certain kind of an agreement, and Rabbi Villalem took control of at least the part of that library. Not the part in the second floor, but the one in the basement. And so things happen. Now, if we're talking about Barry Gerari, we're talking about the only grandson of the former Rebbe. He came with his family in 1940 to the United States.
Orange State didn't have any children?
Orange State didn't survive the Holocaust.
They had children? But they didn't?
No, they didn't have children and didn't survive the Holocaust. And if we're בסדר, הכל בסדר. If we're talking about what happened, then we're talking about the library now. In the we started talking about Barry Gerari. As we said, Barry Gerari was the only grandson of the former Rebbe, and he was a very skilled man, but he went the wrong way. I don't know if he ran off the derech completely, because when you see pictures of him, you see him with a yarmulke, and he looks from. But again, this is pictures of him in old age. I believe that there was a reason. No, he's dead. But I believe that there was a reason he decided to take the books. I'll tell you why. As he married a woman called Mina Chaskind. And Chaskind. Yeah. And she was a stockbroker, as far as I remember, because I again don't recommend it, but there is a YouTube where he's telling his whole life. And he says his wife was a stockbroker. Now, I don't have direct evidence to say it, but to a point, he was very successful. He worked for ITT he was, I think, head of the guided rockets department. He was a physicist, and he was a very talented man, of course. But in a way, I think I have a hypothesis that his wife lost a lot of money in the stock, and that put him in financial strength. And I think then he remembered that he had some valuable books in 770, and he started taking them out. He started, of course, in the beginning in the second floor, which was much easier for him to do because they lived in the third floor. But afterwards, he didn't take all of them at once. He took one at a time. And when did he do it? He did it on Shabbos, when he came to see his parents, and when he went down when the Rebbe verbrang. And he knew no chassid will be in the library when the Rebbe verbrang. And then he took the books, and when he came out and took them out.
The upstairs library was still being used by the Rebbe?
No, upstairs library was not used by anyone. Especially, it wasn't a real library. It wasn't a library in the way we see it.
Neglected.
It wasn't a library. It was a collection of books, meaning there wasn't a charter saying we have such and such books, and that book is here and that book is there, and every book was signed. It wasn't like that. It was a collection of books, and that was also something they talked about in these. It was a closed library. It said. I didn't hear you, Mo. What you said?
Looks like holy books that are placed in the shul, in the Beis Medrash.
Yes, but it wasn't like that exactly. But because why? It was the books that were stolen were not so much holy books. There were holy books, but they're more artistic. I mean, their value wasn't because of their holiness, but it was because of their rareness and because they were before print. Some of them were before the time of the print, meaning it was in 18th century books, very old and rare, especially when it like he stole a book which is Noam Elimelech book. And Noam Elimelech is a very known book. It's, by the way, the only, from the 550 books they stole, this is the only Hasidic book that he stole. But what was so special about that Noam Elimelech was it was a first edition. You can only imagine. I don't remember how much. We're talking on 10, many. Again.
But wait a second. Earlier you said that there was two libraries. One library that the Rebbe, upon becoming Rebbe, he waived his right to that, and he gave that.
A Rebbe never waived his right. He didn't. He didn't give away. He just didn't want anything to do with it, and that's what he said to Rabbi Levin in that letter.
That's in the basement, the one we're talking about.
There were two. The books were held in two places. One in the basement, which is the main one, and the other, where was the rarest books, and also the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, was on the second floor on the second. No, upstairs, even upstairs. Well, people do. Not the Rebbe. We're not talking about the Rebbe's office, but the former Rebbe's office on the second floor. Yeah, there was the rare books there. Also Ktuvim from the Alter Rebbe to the Frierdiker Rebbe.
It's not that he waived his right to it.
He said like this. He said to Chana Gurari, "I want a key." And she said, "I'll get your family. I'll give you a key." He said, "I don't want a key. I want the key." I said, "The key." And he said, "The key I'm not going to give you." And even after Rabbi Nechemedina died, they refused to give him the key to the second floor. Okay? We're talking about a very big family quarrel here. And
you didn't want to give who the key to the...
And the Rebbe said to people privately that the fact that he controlled the whole Hasidic world and not the library was hurting the wholeness of his Nesias, because his Nesias wasn't whole without that library. And then when people suddenly what happened, that people found out that rare books were being taken. And after rare books were being taken, they tried to fasten the security, but they didn't found it. And after they didn't found it, they put the surveillance cameras. And then when they put the surveillance cameras, and
we're talking about 1985.
Yeah, we're talking about 1980. Then in summer 1985, the lawsuit began, but we're talking before. winter, and when they found it was Beri Gerari, Rebbe tried to speak to the Rashag, it didn't help. He tried to speak to Chana Gerari, it didn't help. Everything he tried didn't help. And then he talked about it on a Farbrengen. On Yud Bet Yud Gimel Tammuz.
Does he have any children?
It is disputed between Chabad and Beri Gerari if he has any children. He says that he has 2 daughters. And Chabad says that they are adopted. What is the truth? I don't know. And I don't think that's too much important, but saying it personally, I prefer for him to have 2 daughters than from the thought that there is no other descendant to the Rebbe's family. Direct. When we're talking about direct descendants, of course. Okay, but if we're talking about directly, Beri Gerari is the last descendant. Okay? So I prefer to believe that there were his actual daughters, but if they're not, this is not so important. But what was important, that in the end, they had to pull in legal procedures. The Rebbe talked about it. He said very strong things like like it's the bomb and you're tearing the flesh out of. We're talking about very serious things that the Rebbe said, things that he never said in that kind of way. He never talked in that kind of way.
Barry wasn't any of these Farbrengen.
No, he wasn't, but he knew he was going to hear and understand what he was going to say. And indeed, when they found out that there wasn't going to be any compromise, and the Rebbe didn't want any compromise, they had to go to the Beis Din.
People offered the Rebbe that they were willing to repurchase the person.
Chabad repurchased everything, but there was a compromise that he said, "I want the money. I'll give you back the books, but let me have the money."
Which makes sense with your theory.
We're talking about $186,000, which again, we're talking about the 1980s. It's about $1 million today. So we're talking about big money here. He sold one Haggadah, was an illustrated one, for $69,000. So talking about big money here.
Today that's worth probably a couple $100,000.
Yeah, probably. We're talking about that the minimum hourly wage in New York was about $3 to $4. Okay, so we're talking about a lot of money then and now. So when Beri Gerari didn't want to go to Beis Din, they had to ask a Rab. No, they didn't want to. He didn't want to, because as a religious Orthodox Jews, you can't go to federal court. You have to first get a permission from Beis Din to litigate with someone. So he went to a Rav. He was not Chabad. It wasn't Chabadic. And he asked them. They told him the whole story. There was a rabbi called Moshe Bogolminsky who wrote a book called Didan Notzach the Victory of the Story. And he tells the whole story that he went with another important Rav to the Rav from Kloisburg, and he told him the whole story. That there were 2 daughters, and they said each one wants half of the library, and the grandson took the books, and so forth. And he said that halachically speaking, the rabbi was right. How did he explain it? He explained it because in Hebrew law there's what we call nechsei melog. Nechsei melog means that what does the wife brings to the house, the husband is entitled to the fruits. Melog means from the Hebrew word limlok, which means to tear out. Like if it was a chicken, you have to tear out the feathers or whatever. So he says that because he said, I didn't hear the two parts, but I'll explain to you. If the Rashag and the Rebbe are against the selling of that books, and because the selling is the fruits of the books which the wives bring into the marriage, that selling of the books is not halachically kosher. Okay? So they decided to go to court. And Rabbi Krinsky was the spokesman of Chabad then. He turned to a very prominent lawyer, was prominent then. Dover Chabad.
My relative, Ned Lewin, right?
Yeah, Ned Lewin, your relative. Your relative was already famous there. Rebashkin was much, much later. We're talking about, he had two prominent cases before. One was a public menorah. He legislated about public menorah, and also, he was a DC lawyer, and there was a case about an officer in the United States Army when he refused to put the yarmulke on. They forced him. Yeah, he refused to take off the yarmulke and put a hat instead. And so he was a prominent lawyer then. And so Rabbi Krinsky came to him with the case. And he came from a page from Shulchan Aruch. And he says, Rabbi, and Ned Lewin said, it's the first time people come to me. They usually come with a briefcase and not with a page from Shulchan Aruch saying when it was okay for a Yid to take someone to court. They filed a TOR. What is it? A TOR stands for temporary restraining order. Okay? How did they know? Now they had a huge problem. What was the huge problem? They had no idea. No, that wasn't the TOR, but they had a huge problem. As I said, it wasn't an orderly library. Meaning they didn't even have lists or catalog of the 40 or 50,000 books that were there. So they had no idea how much books were stolen. But you have to understand, when you're talking with book dealers, you have to have an internship in it.
What?
An internship. You have to understand what kind of book it is. Because as long you have to have a knowledge in books for how much it's worth. You have to know when it was printed, how many editions there were, how rare it is, what is. So it's a special specialty. And what was the luck? Yeah, it is an antiquity. So the luck was, and Rabbi Bogomilsky tells the story in his book, that he had a cousin called Katzman. And Katzman was a specialist in books. And Barry Gurari hired him to sell 400 books. That's why. Yeah, completely. And through Katzman, they got the list of the 400 books. They got the catalog through because he used Katzman. He didn't use he hired him to sell the books.
And in order to sell the books, you had to catalog everything.
Of course, yeah, exactly. So when they filed the TOR, the temporary restraining order, they had two orders. One was to stop Barry Guraria from selling the books. The other one was taking all the books that was in his house and put them in escrow, in warehouses in New Jersey. So what was the luck? The luck was that there was a Jewish judge, and his name was very Jewish, and he had a Rambam picture of Ktuvim in his books. And again, he was a collector of books himself. Okay? So he immediately agreed to the warrant. And the warrant was issued. Okay, after the warrant was issued, Chabad issued sue Barry Gurari for 3 things. Trespass, and they wanted the books back, and they wanted the money back for what he stole.
It was considered private property, but you said it was purchased by the Aguda.
Yes, but Chabad was represented by Aguda. Aguda was the plaintiff.
Was that private property? Trespassing?
Trespassing because why is trespassing? Because Agudas Chasidei Chabad is the owner of 770. So if you trespass in order to take something, okay, and it's a library, a closed library, is not something private. It's not something public. Although it is public in a way that it belongs to the public, and that's what we'll talk about, that it belongs to the public. That was the case about. So, after that case, Barry Guraria issued a countersuit when he said he wanted a declaration that he was entitled, he and his mother.
Sole heir.
He wasn't the sole heir. He couldn't say that he was the sole heir because his aunt is still alive.
His mother is still alive.
Yeah.
His mother was still alive?
His mother was still alive. She joined him she joined him. And
That's what a mother wouldn't do for his son.
Yeah, you could put it that way. So when Chana Gurari and Barry Gurari said that they were entitled to half of the library because of the inheritance. And the former Rebbe didn't leave a will. So actually, they could claim that thing.
According to the dry law.
Yeah. And now you have to say, in the United States, you would know better than me. The Seventh Amendment says you have to get a jury. And why wasn't there a jury here? And it was only a bench trial because Judge Sifton was the chief judge here, the only judge. He said like this. He said, I have one question here that I want to answer. And the question is the library part of the former Rebbe's estate or not? If it's part of the estate, then it's inheritable. But if it's not part of the estate, the whole...
It belongs to the organization.
No, it doesn't say it belongs to... It's just the only defense argument that they have is that they're inheriting. So... Yeah, I have to. Chaim l'chaim.
Tell you something.
Yeah.
Money is a funny thing, let me tell you.
Money is a very funny thing. And it ruins families. And we have to ask ourselves one question. What was it here? Now, usually you say, when there is a miracle outside nature, what is greater? A miracle inside nature or outside nature?
The Chassidus we know that enclosed in nature is greater.
Yeah.
Purim.
Purim, for example. That's why we have to put an emphasis. Yeah, most people say, look, I come from a Farbrengen, I don't want to hear a legal document. I want to hear what happened on the Hasidic point of view.
Miracle, blah, blah, blah.
Whatever that means. But if you don't, the whole thing that occurred in a trial. Okay? And if you don't understand the trial, you don't understand the whole story. And you don't understand the claims that they were claimed, you don't understand how miraculously inside nature things happen. And the first miracle we talked about, you can't call it a miracle, that Rabbi Bogomilsky, his cousin Katzman, worked with Barry Gurari. if that didn't happen, a complete Hashgacha Pratis, because he stole 550 books, and 400 of them.
Can we appreciate the fact that America, the United States of America, God bless America, was the seat for this miracle to happen? Because it's only
exactly.
Possible. America is a free country. I mean, God we trust. The Rebbe lives in America. The free Rebbe lives in America. The Rebbe is in America. That's why the United Nations.
And that was the whole thing. You know the joke, Yosef. You know the joke about someone who came to Chabad and tells his mother, "I have to go to a Farbrengen," and the mother asked, "Okay, honey, what happened?" He said, "It's Yutet Kislev, and the first rabbi came out of prison." And a few months later, he says, "I'm going to Farbrengen again," and he said, "What happened now?" He said, The second rabbi got out of prison, and so forth and so forth. And he says, and the last from Brengen is coming again and saying to his mother, "I'm going to a Farbrengen in Chabad," and he said, "Don't tell me that another of the rabbi got out of prison." And then he said, "Honey, are you sure you're dealing with nice people there? Why they're getting in and out of prison?"
You need to open your Google Translate. I'm saying, take it from the Admonish.
Yeah. But we have to understand the point. And the point is that this Hey Teves is completely different from any other Chabadic Yom Tov. Why? Because you want to sing Didan Notzach? Let's do it.
No, I'm saying.
I'll tell you what. What is different between Didan Notzach and every other Hasidic holiday? Let's break it out. Let's break it in. We're talking about Hasidic holiday. Purim, of course.
Mordechai was the Rebbe.
Mordechai was the Rebbe. Of course, he was the Rebbe of the day. So what is different?
Hey Teves is seemingly a very natural order of events. Nothing miraculous here happened. They won a court case.
What was so miraculous about Yutet Kislev? The Rebbe was charged with treason. He was released from jail. What's so?
He committed a sentence. Okay, so now what's the difference?
The difference is that things didn't happen to the Rebbe. What usually happens in Hasidic holidays, that the main character is the Rebbe. The Rebbe was in jail, and the Alter Rebbe was in jail on Yutet Kislev. The Frierdiker Rebbe was in jail and exiled on Yud Bet Yud Gimel Tammuz, and Hilula is Hilula. And what? Okay, here the Rebbe didn't testify. We'll talk about it. But the thing is here that we usually say in Chabad, Hanasi hu hakol, means something private that happened to the Nasi of Chabad became public. Here was something different. Something didn't happen to the Rebbe. Of course, was explained everything, and we're talking about how he explained to the lawyers what was the key document and how can they win this case. But he was in the background. He guided things, but he wasn't the main character. The main character was Agudat Chasidei Chabad, or literally Chasidim.
How's it connected to Chayei Sarah and everybody's a Shliach?
Oh, yeah, it is connected in a way.
Sure.
That's why we're talking, when we'll get to the appeal, God willing, we'll say why is that so important. Okay, where were we? We were in the beginning of the case. So in the beginning of the case, the lawyers were three prominent lawyers. Ned Lewin, as we say, he said a relative of yours is a great lawyer. Hope he.
Daughter is a great lawyer.
I'm sure she is.
My first cousin.
He had an associate called Sat Waxman. Sat Waxman was the general attorney of the United States in Bill Clinton's time. Attorney General, and he was in the beginning of his way then, but he was a very talented. There was a third lawyer called Jerome Shostak. He also was a very prominent lawyer. I think he was the head of the lawyers' bar in Philadelphia. He was also and.
Drink a bissel, Zoldan.
And also, The lawyers on the second side are also federal judges. They were called Hellerstein and Koren. So who represent the Gurari. And that is very important because we'll see things that they did, which is very surprising for lawyers in that kind of a caliber. Okay? So let's talk about it. The lawyers met the Rebbe. And the Rebbe says, I want you to claim bitul hayesh. I don't know how to say it in English.
Self-nullification.
Yeah. How do you claim before a non-Jewish judge that kind of claim? And the lawyers said, you can hear them on YouTube, that they told the Rebbe, it's something very difficult for us and you can't do it, but you're the Rebbe, and if you want to do it that way, we'll do it that way. He said, no, I want to convince you that my way is the right way.
That the Rebbe is completely nullified, that the Rebbe has no...
Why is nullification? Exactly.
Existence, the Rebbe doesn't have any, that's the idea?
Because if the Rebbe doesn't have a Gashmius in existence, why do we need property? Okay? It's not his property, the whole entity of a Rebbe is public. There's no such thing as a private Rebbe. No such thing. It's like if we're saying someone is it's like the prime minister saying my house is my private house when it's not his private house. He has a job. The job is called prime minister, and that's his house. Yeah, that's his private house. That's something else. But he's not a Rebbe. He's a private man.
He doesn't have a private life.
Yeah, he has a private life, but he doesn't have a private property. And that's what they asked Rabbi Zcharyahu in her deposition. And she said, when he asked him what would property the former Rebbe had, he said, maybe his talus and tefillin was his own. That's what she said. Maybe. Okay? So, but there was about 2,000 exhibits in this trial. Because Rabbi Levine worked on it, and it was the archive was very orderly. Jacobson was a very orderly man, and he had everything documented and cataloged. And so the Rebbe came to the lawyers, and he took out a single letter. He says, this is your prime evidence. And what was that letter? That letter was a letter after the war on the former Rebbe to Dr. Alexander Marx. Marx. Dr. Alexander...
Marx, the communist?
No, he wasn't the communist, and he wasn't the comedian either. He was working at the JTC as a chief librarian. The JTC is a Jewish Theological Seminary, which is conservative training. And so he was then the head of the chief library, Judaic library.
In Germany, America?
No, in America, in New York. And he wanted him to turn to the State Department to explain to him why to help Agudas.
He wanted Marx to write a letter?
Yeah, he wanted Marx to write a letter to the...
To get his books out of Russia?
No, out of Russia, out of Poland. Why? Because he explained that the owners of those books were Agudas Chasidei Chabad, and it was a treasure of the Jewish people. And the lawyers didn't think that was the prime evidence or the prime exhibit. But of course the Rebbe was right, and that was the prime exhibit. So if we go to the case itself, in Israel there is no deposition part. Now when there is new legislation, there is a deposition. And what is a deposition is when you try to testify in preliminary testimony, when you're in disclosure of documents, you are entitled to cross. Get out. Yeah. You want to look for him? Okay. Chaim. So, what was the most important testimony in the deposition.
The Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka?
Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka. She was deposited in her house with a physician. You can see it on YouTube. And why? Now, you have to understand, deposition is not cross-examining in a court of law.
It's friendly.
It's not friendly, but it's not so strict.
You don't feel intimidated.
You don't. Rebbetzin felt, I won't say she was intimidated, because when Rabbi Krinsky asked the Rebbe, should we deposit the Rebbetzin, he said she'll succeed with flying colors, and indeed what happened. So the one who questioned her was called Koren. He's a very smart lawyer, and you can see for 2 or maybe 3 hours he asked her for every piece of little detail that could be on the inheritance, on her mother's inheritance, on her family, every little detail you can think about. But what was the most important question was the end question. What we study in lawyers, when you study evidence law, you don't give a conclusion question.
Asur, you're not allowed to, right?
No, you're allowed to, but it's
leading. It's considered leading.
No, it's no problem that it's leading. No one will give you a straight answer. Meaning, if I lehavdil, ken elef alfei avdalot, if you question a thief, and you don't ask him, did you steal my glasses? What will be his answer? No way, I wouldn't do it. What is the point of cross-examining? The point of cross-examining is winning by points. Finding places where the man got wrong, when he was misleading, trying to put him, to reconcile him with what he said before, and trying to show that he is not accurate, and on one hand, maybe liar on one hand. The most important question of Rebbetzin was being asked was that question. Rebbetzin did the books on the second floor and in the basement in 770. Did they belong to Hasidim, or did you belong to your father? He said, they belong to Hasidim because my father belonged to the Hasidim. That was the question and the answer that we always quote.
Grand Slam.
Grand Slam. And Rabbi Levin said, even if I had to direct Rebbetzin to what to answer, I wouldn't come out of that kind of a perfect answer. Now, that question should have never been asked, because that is conclusion action answer and question. And it shouldn't be asked. The fact that it was asked and that question was answered the way it was, it's a mere miracle.
If now, she would have answered like regularly, she would have been like, it belongs to the Rebbe. So then it belongs to the Hasidim. So they wouldn't have given it
a lawyer.
Like a smart answer.
Yeah, but you have to look at this. We're talking about a prominent lawyer. You're asking this woman for 2 hours.
It's a mistake question.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't say it's a mistake question, but after questioning someone for 2 hours, and you see you don't get anything out of him, asking that kind of an question is fruitless, because you're sure he won't give you the answer you're looking for. So it was miraculously that he even asked that kind of question. Of course, he got an amazing answer. But afterwards, we're talking about, did the Rebbe, they tried to depose the Rebbe. And depose has double meaning. Depose meaning...
Like the whole read, to take down, bring him down from his level.
Really.
But the Rebbe wasn't deposed. Right?
The Rebbe wasn't deposed. And we have a Yom Tov about it. And Kislev. In that Kislev we have a king does not testify. But this is a tricky one, because now we're at Kafh Hey Chesvan, we're getting close to Rosh Chodesh Kislev, right? And when the Rebbe was gezunkt, and the thing is...
The Rebbe is gezunkt.
Yeah, really, we're getting close. No. Okay. So we're in the middle of bringing. L'chaim. Yosef. Hey, l'chaim.
You want me to turn the air conditioner back on?
Whatever you want. I'm completely cool.
Cool like a cucumber?
No,
Cool like Fonzie?
Cool, Fonzie, whatever. I forgot the gel at home. Oh, we're talking about serious business here. You're trying to make fun of me. Come on. Man, what do people in America think of me? Personally, I don't care. I have a message here to the people. Yes, I'm telling you legal stuff, but there is a message in the end. Now, why you think the Rebbe didn't testify? Because there was no need for him to testify. They tried to ask. There always a confusion between Hey Teves, and there were another trial in 1990 when the Rebbe was himself defendant, and that was completely another case, and we'll talk about it sometime else. In 1990, after the book trial.
Who was the plaintiff?
The plaintiff was Chana Gorari. Yeah.
Also around the books?
No, it didn't concern the books. It concerned her being assaulted by a chassid. Yeah.
And she thought that the Rebbe sent him to assault her?
Yeah, she said that the sichas he gave
were like inflammatory or incitive?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But he lost that case.
She lost that case.
Yeah. And that was much more.
That's a screwed up chassid, you know?
Yeah, of course.
You go beat up an old woman.
You have to know the whole story. That chassid did it after the bomb siche. And when he realized, he helped Barry Gerari take the books. He had no idea what he was doing. Now he said, after that siche, he understood he helped someone take out bombs. So he.
5 years later, though.
Okay, but he still understood. Okay.
Zcharyahu though was 5 years earlier.
No, it wasn't 5 years old.
3 years. 2 years.
It was half a year, I think. The whole thing started. No, we're not. We're not. No, she sued in 1990.
She was assaulted during the trial.
Yeah. Okay, we're returning to the case. Why didn't the Rebbe testify? He didn't testify because his heart and doctor said he couldn't testify. And Rabbi Levin writes in his book that that there was an agreement between the lawyers that he will answer questions in writing. And he was answered question in writing. That was the end of it. And so the trial began. When it began, Yutet Kislev, Tafshin Mem Hey. Okay, so even if you're Barry Gerari and you understand that if a trial begins on Yutet Kislev, it's not so good for you. And he tried to delay the trial, but he didn't succeed, and the trial began. And we're beginning with the first testimony. The first testimony by Rabbi Krinsky was asked that Agudas Chasidei Chabad, the non-profit organization we're talking about, was not active. That was the question he was asked. Why? Because we know that Agudas Chasidei Chabad was the historical non-profit organization that ran Chabad in the 1920s. But afterwards, the non-profit organization that ran Chabad is called Merkaz Linyanei Chinuch.
There was Machane Yisrael.
There was Machane Yisrael. Gan Israel.
No, it's split up into several.
It's split up, but the main one, who is also today the main one, who is in charge of the schools and of the shluchim, is still Merkaz Linyanei Chinuch. And so it was then also. And that sikha brought the whole, that question brought a whole sikha from the Rebbe. And that was Hanukkah, and things and then Chabad started to do more and more things to show that they were active.
Active. The Rebbe used the word active. Right?
Active. Nicht aktiv. The word nicht aktiv. Okay? So, when the testimonies ended, there was a lot of testimony. Yeah, the testimony on our part were usually Rabbi Levine testified, and also some prominent other Chabadic scholars. But the main witness was someone called Dr. Liz Jacobs. He was an English doctor who was specialized in Hasidim. And two things that he said that took the judge's attention was one thing. One thing he said that a third of this kind of the library wasn't something a rabbi could read or have in his possession. Why? Because it contained secular heresy and even anti-Semitic books. And so he said, how can a third... I don't think so. That today it's a huge... I don't think they got rid of it. Why didn't they get rid of it? Because Hannah Gurari and Reb Chaim Lieberman said that the former rabbi wanted it to be a scholar's library.
I wonder if it had something to do with the censorship that was going on in Russia in those days. Like it was kind of like a muse. It was like a ruse to so people wouldn't,
But we're not talking about Russia now. We're talking about 35 years after.
So why does the rabbi need these books?
That is the former rabbi was a book lover in a way that they couldn't explain it. He was an amazing rabbi and an amazing writer, because usually rabbis write Hasidus. But the whole history of Chabad we know from the former rabbi. We have his memories, and we have Yoman HaMasar, was the journey of his arrest. The former rabbi had a real talent of telling stories and putting history very vivid. And he also wrote the Yutet Kislev scroll, okay? Or he renewed it anyway. So he was in himself a book lover, and Rabbi Chaim Lieberman said that his aspiration was that the library would be a scholar's library, like in the JTC, in the something that scholars could come and learn on all aspects of Judaism. Even it's the negative part of Judaism, hatred of Jews. Okay? And Hanan Gurari said the same. So that's what he said for the first part. And from the second part, he said that there was a huge difference between Maimed, and Pidyon.
Membership fees.
Okay. Maimed is, like you said, is a membership. It's a membership fee that everybody was part of Chabad then paid. And Pidyon is something different. It's something when you go to your Rebbe and you give him money to redeem your soul. And then it's a present to your Rebbe. Okay? So, after all the testimony, and I can tell you a whole story about the testimony, but people talked about it in length, and but we're here to tell what is the conclusion from everything. The essence. We're trying to. Okay. So after 3 weeks, the trial was ended, and they gave. So we talked about the fact that the trial ended after 3 weeks. After the trial ended after 3 weeks, there was summation, and after summation, closing statements, and after summation, they waited for a year. And what happened on Hey Teves was they got a call from the court, and they started reading Judge Sifton's ruling. Judge Sifton's ruling, now let's say this. Judge Sifton was a very wise man. He was a non-Jewish man, but it is very clear from his verdict that he understood what was going on. How do we know that? Amen. How do we know that? Because we know it from the way he built the verdict. The verdict is built like this. He explains what is Chabad, what is its origins. After that, he explains former disputes over properties in the Rebbeim's family before. Okay?
Previous generation?
Yeah, on inheritance. There was
Not
few.
necessarily the Chabad dynasty.
Yeah, in the Chabad dynasty. It's talking about the Chabad dynasty. Yeah, it's talking about the Rebbe Rashab. Yeah. And then afterwards, he started to explain what was the source of the library. He explained that the secretaries of the former Mary solicited people to donate books or to donate money in order to buy books. Moreover, he explained that the former Rebbe, because he didn't have the Rebbe Rashab's library, he bought a library from a man called Samuel Wiener, who was he was head of the Leningrad Eastern Museum, and they bought his whole library, was gigantic, for $50 a month for 10 years.
This included all these non-Jewish books also?
I don't know what it included. It doesn't write in the verdict what it included. I think it was included the more artistic things. Cultural. Yeah, exactly. So, and again, afterwards, he explained also what happened after Yud Shvat 1950. Who financed the Rebbe? Who financed the library? Who refurnished it? Who paid the monthly wages? And
who bought the building?
Who bought the building, exactly. So we're talking about here, he did everything in his power to prove that the origin of the books and the origin of the library was from public property, from the community, from the Chabad community of the United States. And then he cited the Rabbis Chaim Lieberman's and Chana Gurari's testimony that what the former Rebbe wanted it was to be a scholar library. That's what he said. And he also talked about what Louis Jacobs said, that a third of the library was non-Hasidic books, secular books, anti-Semitic books, communist books, whatever. And it couldn't be that the Rebbe would personally
have ownership of such personal ownership. Exactly.
And what he said furthermore is that Chabad received, there was an agency who saved property from communities who perished in the Holocaust.
Saved, they tried to
no, they got after.
Reacquire.
No, they didn't reacquire. They got it for free. I think also here in this synagogue you have Torah scrolls.
The reparations.
Yeah, it's got restoration.
That's also why most of the cabs in Israel were Mercedes-Benz in the early years.
I don't remember why. It could be, but we're talking about Judaica here. So we're talking about books. We're talking about Torah scrolls. Okay, so when this organization gave it to Chabad, it says that it was selling them for 10 cents with
You know, it says here, this is best consumed with caviar. Just
Oh, really?
Just so you know.
And there's a kosher caviar?
We'll have to find one, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to find one, I guess. Okay. So, what the Judge Sifton said plainly, that the Rebbe did a charitable trust through his actions, and the main evidence or exhibit that he writes in full was the Marx letter. What the Rebbe told the lawyers, it was the prime evidence.
Yeah.
And he stated it, saying that the former Rebbe's behavior proves, in essence, that he wanted to build a trust, a charitable trust, where the trustees were the Chabad community. That's why he gave his ownership of 770 to Agudas Chasidei Chabad, and that's why he gave the ownership of the library in trust to Agudat Chasidei Chabad for the whole Chabadic community of the United States. And that was his verdict. Now, why he said one thing? He looked at the circumstantial evidence. One of them, which I don't think is a circumstantial evidence, it's a direct evidence, which was in the United States there is an inherent tax, an inheritance tax.
There's none in Israel. Ah, right.
In Israel there isn't. There isn't an inheritance. Yeah. So the three Rebbitzins Chamadina, Rebbitzin Chayamushka, Shani Shen wasn't alive at 1950. She died at the Holocaust, in the war. And Rebbitzin Chayamushka all signed a waiver saying that the library wasn't part of the estate. 1950, 1958.
That's it. Why did they need more than that? Isn't that enough?
No, that is the main question. That was enough. Why? If we return to the first thing, why there was a bench trial there and not jury? Because Judge Sifton said something very plain.
Barry's mother signed a waiver?
Yeah.
In 1952?
In 1958.
So what's he coming trying to claim inheritance on what?
Good question.
Doesn't that waiver in 1952 completely...
You're completely right.
Any of his right to any of that?
Of course.
So what's he got?
I don't know what he's talking about.
What's
but
this whole case?
Okay, that is the main question. That is the main question. If there was such a direct evidence proving that the library wasn't part of the inheritance, why there was a 3-week trial trying to prove? Because Judge Sifton wanted to prove something else. He had a father-in-law called Reinhold Neubar. He was a Christian theologian, but he was very acute to what he thought about it. Usually when you talk about a case, when you're a lawyer and you're looking for a precedent, you're looking at subjects. And if you're looking at this case, it's not under an inheritance subject, it's under a trust subject. Why? Because it was clear to the judge that he wanted to build something that wasn't unique for Chabad.
It's like an organization.
He wanted to say, it can't be so. It can't be that someone who is a religious leader,
an individual,
and gets public money, buys public property for the whole community, and then his predecessors can say, we inherited it. Successors, whatever. Because there is, if it was the successor, then it was the Rebbe who was entitled to everything. What we're talking about, inheritors here. The inheritors are not the successors. If you're talking about a religious, the successor doesn't have to be the inheritor. It could be several inheritors.
It could be someone who's appointed by the...
It could be someone else. The Rebbe wasn't a direct king, wasn't a descendant of the Rebbe. He was a son-in-law. So, what he tried to prove, he tried to say, I want to create a legal precedent that explains what happens when a leader gets public property and what is the state of that property. And he says that the former Rebbe, by his behavior and words and action, stands more than words. By giving 770 to Agudas Chasidei Chabad, which is probably giving them to Hasidim himself, because Agudat Chasidei Chabad is the representative of all the Chabad Hasidim in the United States then. Okay, so that was the legal construction that he built in order to explain it. Now, after that verdict was given and people started to party like they never partied before. There is seven-day Mishkan, but you don't need a lawyer to tell you that. There are people who lived then and can tell you the whole story. But what happened afterwards? He filed an appeal. And the appeal is what we're talking about now. This is the appeal.
Almost a year later.
Yes, almost a year.
10 months more.
Oh, 10, and again, is the same thing we're talking about. We're talking about several things happened here that were irregular. What was the irregular? The time. Usually, court cases in Israel, but also in the United States, despite the fact it was federal court, not state court. Why wasn't it state court? You know, why was it federal court, not state court?
Jury, non-jury?
Jury and non-jury is another question we're going to deal with later, which is also raises a question. But why wasn't it in state court? It wasn't in state court because Barry Guraria lived in New Jersey and it's a different state. Okay? But federal court, it's much more better, much more serious, and much quicker than a state court. Okay, why wasn't it a jury here? Because that's something we'll explain in the appeal. L'chaim. Okay. So they got to the appeal. They had to.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you got it. This is for bringing, not a lecture.
Can I ask a question that has nothing to do with anything now?
Okay, I'll answer.
I don't know if you know, but you've heard of the Skver Hasidim?
Square. No, I haven't. Sakura. Okay.
They're considered the richest Hasidic dynasty in existence today.
More than Gur dynasty?
I think so.
Okay.
They have real estate in London, in New York, in Jerusalem. You think I'm gonna get beat up for this? I hope not.
Yeah, it's not going to publish it. Just that.
It's interesting to me if the Israeli courts, because there's been court cases regarding this Hasidic dynasty, if they use the precedent of the United
You're talking
States.
Sadigura.
Sadigura, maybe.
It could.
One who was from England. They had 3 sons. He has 3 sons that have been.
It could be. But usually
Sadigura. Could be I'm Sadigura. Could be I'm wrong.
Could be.
Yeah, you're right. Sadigura.
I don't know.
What's going on over there, man? Crazy.
And it happens not only there. That's what happened in Bobov. You know, there's 2 Bobov. There are 2 Vizhnitzes.
You have a public figure, right? Who, okay, you know, goes the way of the world. The person passes away, right? And then he has inheritors. Right? 3 children. One, the youngest son decided to go. He's completely not qualified to be a leader, apparently, from what I see. He has 2 older brothers. They both lead congregations.
Yeah.
But somehow he has like the muscle. This youngest son. They kicked the mother out of her house. Did you see?
Yeah. I heard about it. I don't know.
Proceedings, right?
No, no. This is the question you have to think about. You're right.
Sorry about it.
No, you're not sorry. We're for bringing here. I can tell you a story, but it does. This is emphasis the importance of this case. No, I don't know if they used this case in concerning that, but what they should have done.
They probably just went to base it.
Yes, probably.
Money, banana.
Probably. Well, they paid someone money and that's it. But if we're going back, יוסף, עוד כמה זמן יש לי? עוד כמה זמן יש לי?
למה?
עד שאתם מפנים.
משיח מגיע.
תלוי בך.
אוקיי, אני כבר לקראת
עכשיו אנחנו מדברים על ברון.
Okay. Now we're talking about the appeal. Barry Guraria had two claims in the appeal. One, there was no charitable trust, and the second one that he didn't got a jury. That was his two complaints in the appeal. No, he said there couldn't be a trust. Yeah, but what does has to do with anything? He talked about the library. He didn't talk about money. He talked about the library. What was the essence of the library? That it was a charitable trust. The former rabbi was the owner of 770 and the library, and he gave it in trust to Agudat Chasidei Chabad. And they purchased. Yeah, and today on Kafh Hey Chesvan, the appeals court strike out his appeal, saying two things: that completely, and they said. נכון, עכשיו כ"ו בלילה, אבל כ"ה זה אנחנו מוצאי. אז he explained, no, it's fine, he's right. So we talked about what was said in the appeal. The appeal said that they didn't have to have a jury. Why is that? Because there is an equity case and a legal case. And most of this case was equity. What is equity? Remedy. It's something it's not money. And because of it, because it's not money, it didn't have to be decided by a jury. And they agreed with the whole hypothesis that the Judge Sifton wrote, that it was a charitable charity. It was clear what the intent of the former rabbi was, and they got the appeal. They rejected the appeal, and the books came back on Bet Kislev. What? Yeah, and when the
decision came out on Kafh Hey Chesvan.
Yeah.
25.
And when the books came back on Bet Kislev, there was a strange thing. Why? Because people thought it was an after party. Okay? After what happened on Hey Kislev, on Hey Teves.
A year before.
A year before. And the Rebbe showed that he was a little bit angry about it. He wasn't angry, of course.
What, over his 10 months?
So, when the books came back, he says, why are you, because people were waiting for the books to come.
People were dancing in the streets.
And he said, why?
Go learn the books.
Exactly. And so, the first time Hey Teves was happened in 1987, it was a question between the elders and the youngsters.
You're supposed to be happy or not happy?
No. Are we supposed to celebrate Hey Teves?
Is it a victory or is it just like...
No, it's not a victory. Is it an event that should be remembered? Or is it an event that happened, we suffered it, and it should vanish?
Sweep it under the carpet.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It makes sense. Why? Because the Rebbe took it very personally. He went to the oil every day during the proceedings. He fasted till midday, and that was... And so after...
Very unusual, right?
It was very unusual. Right? Yeah, he used to go once a week. And everybody said that there was a kitrug.
And the kisei.
That's what he said on the banquet. But What he really meant was, I don't understand. I of course don't know what he meant.
The Rebbe.
Okay, no, I don't.
Meant that we should say Yehiel, the name, that's for sure.
Okay, that's for sure. But what could he said? He said that he's trying to continue to hurt the wholeness of the Messias. In continuing to claim that the library is not part of Chabad and it is private, he put a blemish on Rebbe's Messias. And in the moment this victory was won, the Rebbe's Messias was whole. And yeah, and the two libraries were united.
They moved next door.
And they moved next door, exactly. And so, this is our victory. But we have to understand this stuff. We talked about the difference. Now look, I'm not a Hasidic Mashpia. I'm not. Let's talk business here. We're talking business here.
Throw you on.
Yes, let's throw the vodka at me, no problem.
Put an olive in the vodka.
Yeah, look. But why do you need a lawyer in order to tell you something? Because sometimes a different point of view. I don't see how is that relevant, but let's say okay. But I think that something in here is a point of view that we need to understand, because Chag HaChagim is Yutet Kislev. Why did Yoel Khan say that Hey Teves is larger and bigger than Yutet Kislev? That sounds weird. This was a terrible event, tragic. Why? Because if you're looking at every other Hasidic Yom Tov, at Yutet Kislev it was the Mitznagdim. At Yud Bet Yud Gimel Tabatul it was the communists. Okay? It was always
from the family.
Yeah, it was the Yid from the family again. But it wasn't something. And again, the Rebbe was the main character. Here, the Rebbe was the main character, but he wasn't center stage. Why is that? And why is that we're talking about something that has to do with trust? What is the difference between being an owner or something and being a trustee of something? If I'm an owner of something, I can do it whatever I want. I can sell it, I can burn it, I can destroy it, I can do whatever I want. But if I'm a trustee of someone, I have to. What?
People are relying on you. You're not alone.
Yeah, of course.
More achrayut. It's more. You have more. Right?
But I can't treat it as private property. I can't treat it as it was mine.
But what's the hora'ah for us? What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do?
That's what I'm trying to get at. There is a three-party trust. Chaim l'chaim.
God bless you.
God bless you.
God bless America.
Well, me. Especially now at war. Yeah.
No, and also the U.S. What's it called?
The Rebbe always said that. Yeah. The Rebbe said that the United States was Umah shel Chesed. So we're getting here towards the conclusion. What is the conclusion?
What's our mission?
Our mission is to be the trustee. What is the trustee? The former Rebbe gave us the library 770 and hold this for whom? Why did he give us all of these treasures in trust? For who is the beneficiary of that trust? If we're going back to the Marx letter, a former Rebbe said that it was a treasure of the Jewish people. If we come back to the Marx letter, the former Rebbe wrote that the Ktuvim and the Svarim are a treasure of the Jewish people. Then who is the beneficiary of our trust? The Jewish people. Every single Jew. And who is the owner?
Every single Jew.
And who is the owner of Chabad? Every single Chassid.
I love it. I love it.
And this is the point of...
And upon whom is the obligation to bring Mashiach?
Upon us, of course.
Every single Jew.
Okay? But we're the trustee. What does it mean to trustee? If the beneficiary doesn't want his Hassidicism and Judaism,
Available.
because he doesn't know what treasure he has. We have to be here and to keep it for him. And every Jew that comes to us, and he wants his Judaism and wants his Hassidicism, we have to bring it, give it to him. And because
it's his.
Because
Because
his.
it belongs to him.
Yeah.
Not because I'm doing him a favor.
Exactly.
Because it belongs to him.
Exactly. Because it belongs to him, but it is trusted in us. And that's what the Rebbe says in Parashat Chayei Sarah, that the shliach is from one end is mevutal la Rebbe, is now to the Rebbe on the one hand, and he has but a way to decide for himself about how to do his shlichus in order to bring Mashiach. That is the main cause. And I think this is the main thing on Hey Teves. Because the standpoint turned from the Rebbe to us. In the Rebbe's Siches, he said, I thought Hasidim will take care of these things, but they didn't, so I had no choice but to intervene. What the Rebbe says, he wants us to be independent. He wants us to be independent, like he says in Parashat Chayei Sarah today, that on the one hand, we have to be mevutalim l'Rebbe, on the other hand, we have to goal-oriented and have our own individual way of getting to the point where we need to. So this is, I think, is why Hey Teves is bigger. I have no idea what Yoel Khan meant. He says that the Kitrug there was on Hassidicism, which is the or, and now the Kitrug on Hey Teves was on the Ma'or, which was the Rebbe, which is the center, which is the source of the light. So if we put this to the end,
where are we going? What are we going to take with us to the Makolet?
What we're going to take to us to the Makolet is, we have to understand that Hey Teves, with all the sadness, is a preparation for Gimel Tammuz. This is horrible.
Nothing happened on Gimel Tammuz.
Of course nothing happened. But still, it proves us we have to be independent. We got Chabad's property on Hey Teves, but through that trust, that charitable trust that the former Rebbe gave us. And the Rebbe gave us the power, the koach, and koach nisan, and gave us the ability to be an independent entity in order to spread Judaism and Hasidism worldwide. And we see ambassadors, but moreover,
love.
Trustees. What do you mean trust? When you people have this three branches trust. Trust is us, and the Jewish people trust us. There was a survey that the Tzirei Agudat Chabad did, where they said that most of the non-religious Jews said that if they are looking for Judaism, they will go to Chabad. And you see it all around the world, in Russia, in India, and everywhere. When people are looking for their Judaism or looking for their Jewish entity or identification, they will go to Chabad. בוא אל הטבע.
עינה לידו ושמתי לך.
נכון. אבל בוא אל הטבע.
אחי אדוננו מורנו ורבנו, מלך המשיח לעולם.
And that goes back to the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov says, מתי קאתי אמר? When is Mashiach going to come? when everybody is going to be like you, כשיפוצו מעיינותיך החוצה, and everybody will understand, כמו שאומרים, שבכל תיבה ותיבה יש ניסים וכולי. That in every letter there is godliness and wonders and miracles and godliness. So, when we celebrate Kafh Hey Chesvan, when we celebrate Hey Teves, we need to know that this is our day of independence. Because the Nasi Zakol is for former Chabadic generations. Here we are independent because
everybody's depending on us.
As everybody is depending on us, and we are in connection with the Rebbe and in connection with all the other Jews to give them what they deserve. And God willing, I hope that, and I hope that we will succeed in that way and give every Jew his present in Judaism and Hasidism till Mashiach comes, and we will all be happy and without wars and without any bloodshed. Chaim lechaim.